I'm scared you have more of those. Well, anyway, you know, it's very interesting because in Latin America, coffee was adopted by indigenous peoples in a very deep, strong way. So one of the reasons why in Latin America coffee spread very, very rapidly is because the 1,000-long experience of these natives, native groups, was used for cropping coffee. And one example is fermentation. You know, one way of fermenting coffee and bringing about high quality for naturals came from indigenous people. So I learned this talking to elders in one native group in Mexico. And I always thought, I told this to the Chinese, if you apply all the knowledge you have in fermentation to coffee, this region is going to boom because there is a lot of knowledge on fermentation here. Fermenting tea, fermenting soya, fermenting vegetable, fermenting beans, and so on. Why this knowledge has not been applied to coffee? Because I think you have not been keen on introducing coffee to native groups. Vietnamese, they did it.
And
But
we've had coffee for a shorter period than we. Exactly.
Longer than them.
also, I think you have to stop thinking about native people as stupid. And many people think that you are going to bring them development, that you are going to bring them solutions. So you tend to think that these people have no knowledge and are useless for raising their own livelihoods. This is wrong. What you need to think is, these guys must know something because they have survived through thousands of years of challenges.
Like the Yemenis.
That's a good example. So I think if I were you, I mean, I'm an anthropologist, so what I did in Yemen is exactly what we call cognitive anthropology. Try to ask yourself what these people know. If they have good coffee and good productivity, they must know something. So if the Filipino people have been managing rice, for instance, in such an efficient way, they have developed several varieties. They did what Yemenis did with coffee, with rice. So they must know something about good agricultural practices. But for some reason, they haven't been exposed to coffee knowledge. So what you need to know is how to transfer efficiently the amount of coffee knowledge we have in the rest of the world, put it in the hands of coffee farmers in the Philippines, and then try to fix what is missing. Usually what you need is just to give them a hand. It will help, because they are not stupid, they know a great deal on agriculture.
It's a very good starting point. If we are going to be shifting to more production of Robusta and trying to elevate appreciation of Robusta in the global marketplace, will that heavily impact the coffee experience for consumers? Because now it's a different bean with different characteristics, perhaps different caffeine, comfort level, flavors. So let's say in the next 10 years, what will that strongly impact how we consume our coffee?
Yes, I think the shift is happening as we speak, in two different ways. First, because most of the Arabica coffee that is being produced, it has already Robusta genes. The improved varieties that have been developed during the last 40, 50 years are crosses with Robusta hybrids. So to a limited extent, we are shifting the flavor without noticing.
This was a targeted thing, the hybridization?
Yes, it was targeted, because breeders were looking for resistance to leaf rust, to pests and diseases, to heat, stress, and so on. So they were looking for new crosses with higher productivity and more tolerance and resistance to pests and diseases. And the only way, the cheapest way they could do it is by crossing with Robusta genes. So nobody is telling us that the coffee we drink as Arabica is not 100% Arabica. So the flavor is shifting slowly towards Robusta. And Robusta flavor is also shifting slowly towards Arabica, let's say, because we are improving quality and we are improving the genetics of Robusta. This is a task that is still not completely done.
So what you're saying is what we know today as Robusta and Arabica,
It's no longer pure.
Oh, that's okay.
So we are going to improve genetics in Robusta very fast because we have the knowledge, the genetic tool to do it in a shorter period of time. 40 years ago, it took 25 to 30 years to improve one variety. Now,
Is it because you're doing it the old-fashioned way through the plant?
Using the
With
seed,
generations, plant generations.
that's it.
And now you're doing it more directly.
Genomic selection and statistically assisted genomic selection. So now we have an amazing tool. So you can shorten this by a fraction of a quarter of the time we usually need. So perhaps in 8 years, 10 years, you may develop here in the Philippines amazing varieties if you have the vision, the muscle, the mandate, and the regulatory tools.
Do you think you have experienced and tasted several Philippine coffee beans? Do you think that we have the right beans that are adapted to our environment, or is it necessary for us to find and adapt new, better adapted?
Well, the coffees I've tried are amazing. They promise quite a lot, even if poorly handled. They show some very nice flavors. So I think you have very promising materials. You have very old typicas well adapted to the Philippines.
Dr. Manuel, maybe I can just copy that.
Oh yes, yes, thank you.
Copy mo na lang pages.
But you will need more materials because most of the materials you have in the Philippines have the same, let's say, the same family. They belong to the same family.
So they are susceptible to the same.
Yeah, you know what happened when you cross the same races of animals?
Yes.
They start to be weakened and weakened and weakened. The same happens with plants. So you need to introduce new genes to the Philippines. So the plants will interact among each other and they will face new challenges.
Yes. And we saw the incredible abilities of these plants to adapt in your presentation.
Definitely. So you may profit by bringing in new genetics, new materials from the right climatic conditions. If you take into account what type of climate you have, what type of challenges you have in several regions, you may bring in promising materials and they will enrich the genetic pool you already have in the Philippines.
Who is the leading institutions for coffee research in the world right now?
Well, the Brazilians are ahead of everybody else. And then in the developed world, you have France. CIRAP is one of the leading genetic research institutions for coffee. Then you have Portugal on leaf rust, they have the leading institution. Then for mapping and developing geographical information systems, you have the Americans, and so on. It depends on what you're talking about. But generally speaking, Brazil is ahead of everybody else by a time frame of 50 years.
Wow, that's a lot of research.
But the good news is that they are very open. So provided that you have a good vision, a good program, you don't need to do all over again what Brazilians did.
Oh, you mentioned that the two areas where growth will happen in the next 50 years is Brazil and Southeast Asia. Why did you say Southeast Asia?
Southeast Asia because you have the emerging economies. You have faster growth. The centers of power are shifting from the United States to China, even if Donald Trump doesn't like it. It will happen.
Yes.
So you have India, you have China, you have Thailand, you have Indonesia, Japan, of course, Korea. So this region is heading economic growth. And behind economic growth, you have middle classes, you have the urban areas, and demand for coffee is coming. So if you take full advantage of this growth, you may profit. I mean, it's a good opportunity for any countries in Southeast Asia that are ready to take this advantage. Unfortunately, I don't see any country yet with a strong vision
Within Asia.
within Asia.
Great. I just my question would be more on this vision that you're talking about. Is it going to be a joint vision from the government, coming from the private and public sector? Because I know farmers would love to have the opportunity to, grow stronger coffee vines so that they can, produce more high quality beans. But the thing is that the government might not be able to support or give them enough support in order to meet this vision. So is there, there are some programs in place, but it's not enough to be able to support that. But should it be like coming from a private sector so that there would be enough mandate to see it through?
I always believe that change has to come from both strong market-friendly model and also lots of support from the government, a good mandate, good regulations. I'm also very hesitant about the government, to tell you the truth. In the 30 years, almost 30 years I have been working on coffee, I have seen very little good policy making. And there is a good reason why. Because politicians think short term, because politicians do not know the details, the guts of the coffee complexities. And the little good policy I've seen in the government has happened under pressure. When farmers are well organized, when the industry pushes for change in the government, that's when you see good policy making, which is very much needed. So I believe that the change in the Philippines may come from a strong private industry, strong cooperatives, strong farmers union, pressing politicians. I don't see the government taking the lead. Sorry
take the initiative.
to tell you.
Never in any country.
Yeah. Cherry, we used to have the IPOCA here under the Department of Trade and Industry. But I don't hear about it now.
No, not anymore until Tony Reyes passed away.
Yeah, they had
He died a natural death. I mean, IPOCA here is attached to the Brazil office.
So I see a very important role played by the government, but when the private sector takes the lead, creates vision and presses for delivery. I mean, I think the government is needed because resources are not plentiful. The private sector main role is to make business, not not to fight poverty. I mean, of course, you can make a huge contribution, but it's not up to the private sector to do everything. So I believe that the private sector is important, mainly to push the government to deliver and to create strong vision for the coffee industry. I've seen good ideas in the government here. I think it's not rocket science. Everybody knows the basics, but delivering is very, very important. In Mexico we say, promising do not make a poorer. Delivering is what it matters. So you always hear good things, good promises, right?
Yes.
But delivering is an accountability. So I don't see fast progress in the Philippines in the near future, unfortunately. So it will take a lot of organization from farmers and from the private industry before something meaningful is going to happen in the government.
So it's not